Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Have you ever been ghosted? Or breadcrumbed? Or, found yourself in one of those situationships? If any of that sounds familiar, you know that modern dating can feel like it needs its own instruction manual. Well, today, we're going to decode that new unwritten rulebook using some amazing insights from Natalie Lane's The Modern Dating Slang Handbook.
This single line from the book just gets right to the heart of it. Why do we even need all this new slang? I mean, it's not like feelings of heartbreak or confusion or anything new, right? But the behaviors that are causing them, those are different. We're all trying to connect through screens, and that creates this whole new language we have to learn just to make sense of it all.
So, think of this as your field guide. We're going to start with why this new dictionary even exists. Then, we'll dive right into the messy stuff, the disappearing acts, being stuck in limbo, and then we'll get to the good part, a toolkit to help you spot healthy connections and, most importantly, how to choose clarity for yourself.
Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1, a new dating dictionary. Before we even get to the specific words, we got to understand the emotional patterns behind them and why this new language was so necessary in the first place.
Here's the most important thing to remember. Behind every one of these new trendy terms like ghosting or benching is the very real, very human experience. We're talking about longing, confusion, heartbreak, hope, the whole thing. The book argues that these words only exist because we desperately need a way to name the specific patterns that our digital lives have created.
All right, so now that we get why these terms exist, let's look at some of the most common ones. And let's be honest, often the most painful ones. Section 2 is all about when they just vanish. The modern disappearing acts.
And first up, the classic ghosting. We've all heard of it, and a lot of us have felt that sting. But the handbook is really clear on this. Ghosting is almost never about your worth. It's about the other person's inability to handle the discomfort of a real, honest conversation. They use silence as this kind of escape hatch to avoid any emotional responsibility. In this case, their silence really is the answer. And just when you think it's over, things can get even weirder with haunting. This is basically the ghost who won't leave the haunted house. They don't want a relationship, but they don't want to completely lose their access to you either. They're trying to get that feeling of connection without any of the responsibility, just keeping that door cracked open ever so slightly.
Now, orbiting is a close cousin to haunting, but there's a key difference. It's less about keeping you as an option and more about, a kind of emotional surveillance. The book says this is really just driven by curiosity, a desire to keep tabs on you from a safe distance. They're happy to just stay in your orbit with zero intention of ever landing.
So let's just quickly break down the real difference here. Ghosting is a pretty definite, silent ending. The connection is totally cut. But with haunting and orbiting, the person is still maintaining this passive, weird connection to your life. It's really the difference between a clean break and this confusing, lingering digital presence that just keeps you guessing.
Okay, so some people vanish completely. But what about the ones who stick around, but just barely? Well, that brings us to Section 3, Are You an Option? This is where we get into these low-commitment connections that are designed to keep you in a state of permanent limbo.
And this is the painful, exhausting cycle of breadcrumbing. It all starts with a random message out of the blue, right? Maybe a vague, low-effort compliment. And then, poof, silence for days, which just leaves you wanting more. It's this pattern of emotional rationing, and it's designed to keep you hooked on the absolute bare minimum of attention.
Benching actually takes this a step further. This isn't just about keeping you interested. It's about putting you in emotional storage. Our source explains that you haven't been chosen, but you haven't been released either. You're just waiting on the sidelines for a game you were never actually invited to play in the first place.
And finally, there's cushioning. And let's be clear, this isn't about connection at all. It's emotional insurance. The person is basically hedging their bets, creating a safety net of other people to fall back on just in case. It's a behavior that's rooted in a deep, deep fear of being alone.
So, from being kept on the sidelines, we now move into the ultimate gray area. Section 4 deals with when your relationship status is, it's complicated. This is all about navigating the ambiguity of connections that just defy clear labels or public acknowledgement.
This right here is the ultimate state of ambiguity. A situationship gives you all the benefits of closeness, the intimacy, the chemistry, the inside jokes, but it completely avoids the vulnerability of commitment or actually defining the relationship. It's connection without any clarity.
So, how public is your connection?
Turns out there's a whole spectrum. On one end, you've got pocketing, where you're kept a total secret, which honestly can feel really invalidating. Then in the middle, you have the soft launch. Maybe a hint of you in a photo. And all the way on the other end is the hard launch, a proud public claim of the relationship. It's like the journey from being hidden to being celebrated.
Okay, wow, we have navigated a lot of confusing territory. So how in the world do you protect your peace through all of this? Well, that brings us to Section 5, from red flags to green. Think of this part as your personal assessment toolkit.
This one is a critical red flag. The source calls it emotional acceleration, not love. The pattern is always the same. A huge rush of intense affection. You're the one. I've never felt this way before. Followed by a sudden withdrawal that leaves you confused and just craving that initial high. But healthy love grows steadily. It doesn't just explode and then vanish.
And on the flip side, we have green flags. The handbook reminds us that healthy love is supposed to feel calm, not chaotic. These are the signs you really want to look for. Consistency, clear communication, people who actually follow through on plans. These signals create safety and trust, not anxiety and confusion.
And then there are the beige flags. Now, these aren't warnings, they're just quirks. The little things that make you go, huh. Like, maybe they talk to their plants, or they only text in memes. These are those harmless, uniquely human traits that add texture to a personality, not danger.
Okay, this one's kind of fun. Being delulu is basically just having hope without any evidence. It's when you create a story in your head to make sense of someone's really confusing behavior. You tell yourself they're just busy, when really they're just being inconsistent. This mindset is often what makes us ignore very clear red flags in favor of a fantasy we've made up.
All right, we've defined the terms, we've identified the red flags. Now for the most important part, our final section, choosing clarity over chaos. Let's look at how you can actually use all this new language to empower yourself.
So at the end of the day, the crucial point of this entire handbook is this. Learning these terms isn't about collecting a bunch of labels to throw at people. It's about recognizing patterns so you can honor your own needs. Once you can actually name these behaviors, you can see them clearly and finally decide what you truly want and what you really deserve.
And really, that brings us to the ultimate goal. Understanding this new dictionary isn't just about spotting bad behavior. It's about empowering yourself. As the handbook suggests, once you have the language, you finally have the power to write your own rules, to choose a story that brings you clarity and confidence. So the question isn't just, what do these terms mean? It's what new standard are you choosing for yourself moving forward?